Chapter 104. Ryan thought this run would have been an Augusty one. Joining the Mafia organization, climbing the ranks, perhaps challenging the Big Thunder Man for his daughter's hand. But as he prepared to assault the Bliss Factory with a ragtag band of misfits at his back, Ryan understood he had been mistaken. This run was a hidden, yet unexplored route. The Carnival route. Ryan and Shroud floated far above the Bliss Factory, hidden inside a cloud. The former carried by his armor's propellers, the other by his own power. Len waited under the waves for an amphibious assault, while Mr. Wave and Saren would soon fall in position. "They will know it's us," Shroud complained, barely visible. "The Carnival. I shouldn't have told Mr. Wave about this operation, that weirdo won't listen to reason." Ryan gently slapped his translucent friend on the helmet, to his surprise. "What was that for?" the vigilante asked. "You don't diss Mr. Wave in my presence," the courier replied. "If he wishes to strike fear in Lightning Butt's heart, it is his divine right and we shall indulge him." "Wait, didn't he save your life?" Shroud scoffed. "I should have known he influenced you." The Kashmir obsession was a telltale sign. Ryan loved Kashmir like any sensible human being, but Mr. Wave did open his eyes about its splendor. The courier's first loops mostly revolved around the superhero saving him from an explosion, over and over again, shielding the time traveler from flames with his soft wool suit. The original plan was to blame the Metagang for the attack, but while Mr. Wave had agreed to change his clothes, he simply traded his flamboyant suit for a black tuxedo and scaled boots. "They will know it's you, Wave," Shroud had complained, somewhat rightly. "You aren't even hiding your face." "Mr. Wave is wearing an evil suit," his dashing teammate had protested. "It is black, the underclothes were made in China, and the socks were woven with linen." Ryan had looked at his hero in shock and outrage. "That's a war crime." "Indeed." So Mr. Wave surrounded them with tasteful alligator boots, to soften the blow. Like putting a flower on a Kalashnikov's barrel. "Why are you using the third person?" Len had asked. First person cannot properly contain the power of Mr. Wave's name. Though Len had giggled, probably because she had grown used to Ryan's own antics, the rest of the team didn't get it. "Is yours always like this?" Shroud had asked Saren, as she removed her hazmat suit to let her gaseous form out. She had snickered in response. "You think there's more of them?" "I pray not." "Wardrobe," Ryan had said, dashing all their hopes and dreams. "I've heard of this wardrobe," Mr. Wave had finished. "Our meeting will be legendary, but Mr. Wave doubts the world will survive it." Afterward, Saren had let her gaseous body flow through the wind turbines surrounding Ischia Island, causing a few dysfunctions. Geist had sensed her presence and left the fortress, but didn't know what to look for amidst all the toxic gases. Still, as Ryan observed the golden skull flickering in and out of existence around the island, he wondered how far the yellow genome's powers extended. Casper the Ghost could clearly sense Saren somewhere on the island, though she had no corporeal body. Did he sense her soul? Did people actually have souls? But if so, why couldn't he sense Ryan and Shroud in the air? This reminded Ryan of Monaco. Yellow genomes usually had conceptual limits, reasoning in terms of abstract laws rather than scientific rules. Perhaps Geist could only detect people who technically set foot on his haunting ground, or something like that. In any case, with the Ghost busy and the Olympians holding their meeting, the Bliss Factory was temporarily without its main defenders. Now was the time to strike. The assault began with a metal monster rising from the waves and landing on the shore. With full access to Mekran's armory, Ryan wasn't the only one who upgraded his technology. Len had also exchanged her power armor for a new one, to reduce the risk of being identified. Her second mech was as bulky as Vulcan's, and reminded Ryan of Cthulhu, with inorganic tentacled whips where the face should be. The hands finished with mighty crab pincers, and the armor's blue paint job made it near undetectable in the water. The alien design was unlike anything Len ever built, and took more inspiration from Mekran's own creations. She immediately opened fire on the fortress with shoulder torpedoes, collapsing huge chunks of the outer walls. Vulcan's turrets, The few which Saren couldn't sabotage without bringing attention upon herself, immediately opened fire. Ryan blasted them from above with his chest gravity gun, black spheres collapsing space around them and crushing the weapons. Shroud also discreetly sabotaged the glass and silica components within the machines, causing severe malfunctions. With the automated defenses down, Augusti guards and riot gear swarmed the walls still standing, while their allies in red, padded steampunk armor emerged from the main gates to intercept Len. Ryan recognized the latter as Vulcan's corporation of pyrokinetic genomes, their equipment turbocharging their powers. They tossed car-sized fireballs at Len, causing her outer shielding to heat up. A red blur crossed the sea at blinding speed, hitting an Augusti genome so hard that he crashed halfway through a stone wall. Mr. Wave will set his foot down, Mr. Wave proudly announced his presence. Hands raised to the skies, and it will be in someone's face. Ryan couldn't help but fanboy over his idol, and squealed loud enough to cause guards to look up. "You idiot, you alerted them to our position," Shroud complained before flying away, fully turning invisible and waiting for an opportunity to infiltrate the fortress. Ryan himself shrugged off gunshots. His armor could resist punches from Augustus and Fallout, so bullets easily bounced off. The chilling, ghostly wind in the air, though, was a greater source of concern. Ryan barely had the time to fly to his left and avoid a rock the size of his car falling on his head. A glittering tornado of colored, supernatural dust manifested in its wake, a ghostly golden skull materializing above the fortress. "What is all this racket?" Geist asked, though he didn't sound concerned at all. If anything, he sounded bored as he oversaw the battlefield. An automated torpedo flew out of the water and landed on the island, with Saren's power armor held within. "Who are you guys?" Ryan almost introduced himself as Saturn, before deciding it wasn't a powerful enough title. "King Saturn," he introduced himself, his armor modifying his voice. "Time to abandon democracy for the divine right to rule." "You can't call yourself Saturn," Casper the Ghost replied, while telekinetically lifting broken remnants of the fortress' outer wall. "I think my organization has a copyright on Roman names." "King Saturn." Ryan activated his chest weapon. With a capital K. His gravity projectile went harmlessly through Geist, not even phasing him. The Spectre replied with a rain of stones, each powerful enough to crush a tank. Since the courier was wary of overusing his time stop lest his fighting style be recognized, he had to make circles around the attacks. "A ghost?" Mr. Wave asked on the ground, holding an Augusti guard above the ground by the throat. "Are you one of Mr. Wave's victims?" "No," Geist replied, as he telekinetically tossed more projectiles at Ryan. Other chunks he moved back in place to replace the outer walls, dealing with the assault with no more enthusiasm than a middle manager filling his taxes. "Give it time, you will be. If I kill you, will it count as murder, since you're already dead?" Ryan mocked the Spectre before flying through him. He expected to inflict damage like with Augustus, but instead, he harmlessly phased through Geist's ethereal skull. The Spectre responded by telekinetically slamming him to the beach below, and Ryan ended face first buried into the sand. "Oh, he fell down," Geist noted, with a hint of amusement. "Did it hurt?" This confirmed it. Ryan's secondary power only worked during the time stop. The courier quickly guessed why. His power worked by aligning Earth's reality with the purple world, itself a crossroads between all of space and time. The crossroad through which he could draw energy from the black world. A mighty crimson shockwave hit the Bliss Factory while Ryan rose back up, causing the entire castle to shake and a barbican to collapse. Stones crushed Narcinia's flowers near the fortress, and a hole opened to the chambers inside. "Oh man, Ceres won't like that," Geist commented with a bored tone, while Ryan's heat sensors informed him Shroud used the opportunity to slip inside the fortress. Though the Spectre hastily repaired the destroyed curtain walls, the invisible vigilante had already slipped in. The courier looked at the blast source, a woman in an orange synthetic suit lined with strong crimson metal plates. The helmet resembled a mix between a gas mask and a knight's helmet, while the gauntlets radiated crimson light. Saren had put on her own power armor. Created in Micron's labs with data harvested over the previous loop, the suit was specifically insulated to resist the wearer's own rusting power. It also spread her shockwave power through her entire body. When guards rained bullets at her chest, they flattened instead of inflicting lethal wounds. "Not so easy to harm me anymore, eh, jackasses?" Saren gloated, before raising her hands and shattering a pyrokinetic genome in power armor. "It's payback time. Look, I really hate working and I ain't paid for this job," the ghost said with the laziest voice possible, expanding the colored dust supporting his ectoplasmic skull. A glittering storm the size of a tornado soon surrounded the castle, forming an impenetrable wall around it. "Could you just, go away? Or we could play Board and Conquest, if you're up for it. If you hate your job, why don't you let us in?" Saren snarled while sending a shockwave at the colored storm. The blast failed to get past the defense, and Ryan realized that Geist drew the strange substance from the yellow world. The twisted storm blew sand in all directions, expanding the beach's size. "Father Torque promised to find a way to exorcise me back to heaven if I kept the place clean, and I don't know any other priest. I'm kinda bound to that island, so I don't have an active social life." Geist observed each member of Ryan's team in turn. "Is one of you a priest, by any chance?" "Mr. Wave has a rabbi license." The genome in question leaped into the air and transformed into a laser, aiming straight for Geist's ghoulish face. "And he will cut you like Solomon." Geist telekinetically stopped Mr. Wave in midair, the red genome reverting back to his original form. "I'm Christian, so you're out of luck," the ghost said before throwing Mr. Wave into the sea. "Unless is unfair." "Don't tell me," Ryan said while returning to the skies. Geist let out loud sounds that could pass for a shrug, and his skull changed shape. Two ginormous golden bone arms and a ribcage formed below it, supported by the colored tornado protecting the bliss factory. The spectre had turned into a colossus, and his hands lunged for Ryan. "Wait, you can shapeshift?" Ryan protested as he did his best to avoid the colossus hands. "Why didn't you do it against Dynamis?" "Dynamis?" Geist asked, confused. He attempted to crush the flying courier like a bug with all the motivation of an exhausted disc jockey. "I can do pretty much anything a ghost can, which is surprisingly a lot. I wish it included moving out though." That Ghostbusters ad was the yellow version of Leo Hargraves. Ryan shuddered to think what the Spectre could do, if he wasn't limited to his haunting ground and had any motivation whatsoever. If he had any killer instinct, Geist would have realized that he could telekinetically crush people rather than toss them away. Saren and Len attempted to support Ryan, the former with shock waves, the other with torpedoes. Neither seemed any more effective against the Colossus golden arms than water guns against a statue. Mr. Wave raced back to the island on foot, a crimson dash turning water to steam in his wake. He tried to cross the tornado barrier around the Bliss factory, only to be thrown back as if he had hit a force field. "Okay, you've done it," Geist said, his tone markedly more annoyed. "Ever watched The Mummy? 1932 or 1999? Ryan asked, before realizing what the Spectre had in mind. "Oh, 1999. The beach below the flying courier began to shift and twist, forming waves like a raging sea. Len and Saren were buried beneath them, alongside most of the defeated guards, while Mr. Wave had to run away in laser form. The beach then started to rise, a scent tsunami forming at Geist's will. The higher Ryan flew, the taller the wave. I never tried to see how high I could raise it up," Casper the ghost said, amused by Ryan's attempt to escape. By now the sand wall had risen higher than the Bliss factory and emptied the shore of sand. The courier hoped his allies' power armors could shield them from the inevitable impact. "All right, Imhotep, I'm sending you back to the 90s. Ryan swirled around Geist's arms, bypassed them, and then went straight for the skull. "Teeth first." "I'm kinda dead already," Geist said, unimpressed. He didn't even bother to cover his skull with his giant hands, so confident was he in his immortality. "Even Cancel and Pluto couldn't put me 6 feet under for good." "In that case, you forced me to use my full power," Ryan said, raising his fists. Now I have to use my hands. The time traveler froze time right as his gauntlet reached Geist's skull, but only for a split second. A trail of dark particles trailed from his fingers like a falling star's tail as the world turned purple, a black meteor striding across the skies. An unstoppable force hitting an intangible object. And as Ryan's metal fingers connected with the specter, he felt resistance. When time resumed, Geist's golden skull flickered, black cracks appearing where Ryan hit him. The tornado of glittering dust that supported it weakened for an instant, and the telekinetic force that raised the scent tsunami failed. Tons of scent collapsed onto the ground around the fortress in a cataclysmic crash. A cloud of dust spread over the island and the sea, to the point that Ryan couldn't see anything within it. Some of the sand found its way to the fortress, tainting its strong walls yellow. You. Geist's gaze of ghostly light turned to Ryan in shock, his giant arms falling down like a stringless puppet. You hit me. Vad retro satanas. Ryan said. Below, the dust had died down and Saren propelled herself out of her sand prison with a shockwave. Mr. Wavery appeared from the island and started moving around the beach at high speed, perhaps looking for the buried Len. Or you will see the back of my hand again. You harmed me. A strange colored substance fell from the skull's eye sockets, a liquid version of the glistening dust Geist left in his wake. You harmed me. He was crying? Ryan felt bad for a moment, before realizing there was no sorrow in the ghost's voice. These were tears of joy. Finally, Geist shape-shifted once more, his arms and ribcage vanishing. The colored tornado that shielded Castle Aragonese vanished, leaving the Bliss Factory defenseless. What guards the team hadn't beaten, the ghost sent tsunami had crushed. Go ahead, send me back to heaven. Rip my ectoplasm open, my soul is ready. Normally, Ryan had no problem hitting his foes, but something in the specter's voice made him hesitate. He stopped time and lightly slapped the specter's skull, who moaned as time resumed. The courier shuddered. Why won't you kill me, you selfish tease? Geist snarled, when his foe didn't dare strike him a third time. Stop, you're... Ryan looked away. You're making it awkward. Do you want to make me beg? Is that what you want? If you take pleasure in it, it robs me of mine, Ryan said, grossed out. I'm all for euthanasia, but this one feels dirty. I have waited 15 years. Geist's skull complained while moving in the courier's field of vision, forcing Ryan to acknowledge him. 15 years as a ghost, unable to move on. Can you fathom how boring it is, to keep watch of this toxic dump? Nobody ever visits, except for work. The discussion made Ryan uneasy. Look, I understand the downsides of immortality, more than you think, the courier said, trying to find the right words. But do you really wish to die for good? It's not a decision to take lightly. If he truly wished to perish, Ryan would put the ghost to rest in his perfect run. But when his violet elixir presented him with a similar conundrum, the courier chose life over death. He didn't want to go through with that option unless the poltergeist was absolutely sure of his decision. Are you serious right now? Geist snorted. Would you want to be a ghost bound to one place, completely intangible? I'm sure there are ways around that limit, Ryan replied. And you got phenomenal cosmic powers out of the deal. You could probably go toe-to-toe with Augustus if you wished. Geist remained silent a few seconds, but the courier's words clearly didn't reach him. What use is power if you can't enjoy life? He asked. I can't taste, I can't touch, I can't sleep or dream. I can't have kids and there aren't enough games to fill my time with. I can lift things with my mind, but they don't feel warm. The world is cold to me, tin can. It's unbearable, half a life. On the ground, Ryan noticed Saren and Mr. Wave lifting Len from under the sand. His former vice president listened to the discussion with rapt attention, probably because it struck home. I've tasted heaven and peace, only to be yanked back to earth, Guy said. I died years ago, but I can't rest. All I can do is kill time. Unless you can raise me from the dead? That's beyond my power at the moment, Ryan admitted. But maybe in the future? Yeah, and maybe I'll still be rotting on this island while the sun swallows the earth. I've waited for Father Torque to find a solution for years, and maybe I'll take my chances. 15 years as a ghost were 15 years too many. Ryan still hesitated, so Saren complained from the ground below. Just finish him off already, she said. He ain't strong enough to carry on, let him go. Do you want me to fight back? Geist asked in despair. Is that what it will take? I don't want to go there, mate, but I will if needed. All right, I will do it, Ryan said, highly disappointed. He closed his eyes, tightened his fist, and prepared to get on with it. Don't make a sound. Hallelujah, Geist replied, waiting for the end peacefully. Heaven at long last. Thanks. Ryan froze time again, and punched the strange ghost with all his might. His blackened fist tore through Geist's intangible body, black particles consuming the ectoplasmic substance like a black hole with stardust. When time resumed, the blow had split Geist's spectral body in half. The golden skull substance seemed to lose cohesion, snow melting under the warm sun to turn into droplets. The ghost dissipated, his immortality cancelled. Below, Saren unleashed a sustained shockwave at the castle, destroying the barbican which Geist had repaired a few minutes earlier. Mr. Wave immediately entered through the hole at lightspeed. As he floated in the skies alone in solemn silence, Ryan remembered his brief stay in the Black World. The time traveler had prayed for an end to his immortality, a way out of his eternal existence. And the Ultimate One had obliged. It had given the time traveler the ability to harm the invulnerable, to kill those who couldn't die. Even Ryan himself. In the end, a president's best friend was the oil he mined along the way. Ryan would have loved to say that after Geist's demise, the Bliss Factory's troops made an epic last stand to protect their drug batches. The courier expected to waste at least an hour to conquer the factory. It took 14 minutes. Shroud, who infiltrated the fortress during the battle, had reached a terminal and hacked into the factory's systems. With the security codes given by Livia, he opened all the doors and scrambled outside communications. Mr. Wave simply toured the factory at the speed of light, and finished piling up 200 unconscious guards by the time the rest of the group entered. Ugh, and here I thought you would leave some for us, Saren complained. You can find a list of Mr. Wave's enemies under the extinct species category, the man boasted, his tuxedo unblemished. Mr. Wave does not kill, he exterminates. Before such wit, Ryan felt like a student in the presence of a master. They advanced into the Castle Aragonese's corridors and made their way to the Bliss Labs within. In stark contrast with the ancient walls outside, the Augustine had reinforced the inner structure with steel walls and blast doors. Saren broke down the few that Shroud didn't open for them. Eventually, the group made its way to the facility's core, and the center of Bliss production. Bacchus developed his beloved drug in underground warehouses below the fortress, and even Ryan found the size of the operation mind-blowing. A vast glass garden housed the plants producing the drug's raw material, strange flowers with light blue petals and yellow cores. A small army of workers in hazmat suits harvested the petals, with the plants regrowing their missing bits in minutes. Afterward, the petals were drenched in oil, dried, and turned into a blue powder mixed with other chemicals. The resulting substance was routed through automated lines where a small army of robotic arms put bliss in small canisters and hypodermics, filling entire crates each hour. From the quantity assembled, Ryan estimated the operation produced multiple tons of bliss per day. Hell, the factory's incinerator worked full-time to eliminate the process waste. Most of the installation was automated, and Lan kept the few remaining workers at Torpedo Point, hands behind their heads. What's happening? Ryan heard Vulcan's voice come out of a computer, while Shroud typed on its keyboard. I received an alarm 20 minutes ago. It was nothing, ma'am, Shroud replied, disguising his voice. Psychos tried to raid the factory, but Geist and your security system sent them packing. Of course they did, Vulcan scoffed on the other end of the line, too proud of herself by half. I told you an inspection was a waste of time. It was, ma'am. It was. Shroud ended the communication and looked up from his panel. "I've downloaded the production data and deleted the camera footage. Let's torch this place." "Oh yeah." Saren eagerly blasted the glass gardens and the planks within. The vibrations snapped the alien flowers in half, and the psycho soon moved on to the assembly lines. Mr. Wave is quite happy. His idol patted Ryan in the back as they observed the destruction. "He was worried you would grow up the wrong way, and that he would have to put you down like an old yeller. But you became a man of refined taste and great skill. Thanks to your example." After saving him so many times, Mr. Wave had left a powerful impression on Ryan. "What were you up to in all these years?" Mr. Wave asked. "Mr. Wave tried to look for you a few times, but you never seemed to spend long in one place. I conquered Monaco, won a town at a poker competition, and got an alien to autograph my Necronomicon." "Nice." In his case, Mr. Wave traveled to Tibet and explored the great mysteries of the cosmos. Did Mr. Wave create the world when he was born, or was the world made for Mr. Wave? Is it possible that the only gravity is the one produced by Mr. Wave's charisma? "How can you stand this guy?" Saren asked Shroud over the sound of her shockwaves. "Only in small doses," the glass manipulator replied. "Mr. Wave understands. Prolonged exposure to Mr. Wave can cause a pathological desire to worship him, or near-death experiences. There is no middle ground. Instead of standing by, there's something you could help with," Shroud said, after destroying computer parts with his power. "Bacchus is a secret testing area and you will understand when you see it." Ryan did, to his horror. Shroud led him and Mr. Wave deeper inside the facility, into a secret room behind a cold metal corridor. It was dimly lit, with most of the area kept in complete darkness. Ryan walked inside first, his steps echoing on the iron floor. He saw iron bars flickering in the dim light, and his heat sensors sending more than 3 dozen signatures. Though his armor's helmet filtered the air, the stench of human filth overwhelmed it. The livestock pens were so small, that Ryan was certain they had been meant for pigs. They were piled up on each other like a Tetris game, but there was nothing amusing about the sight. As his allies remained eerily silent, Ryan activated his armor's lamps and looked through the nearest iron bars. Humans. 3 humans shared a cage so small, they couldn't rise up on their feet. They must have crawled inside. The veins and lips of the captives had turned blue from bliss overdoses, their skin so white and their flesh so thin that the courier could see the bones beneath. 2 men and a woman. The cages hadn't been cleaned up in a while, excrement piling up in a corner. Though he had looped for centuries, Ryan hadn't grown numb to such sights. Examining the captives filled him with revulsion, doubly so as he looked at the other cages, counting the people imprisoned within. 23, he thought, stopping at a man whose eyes a swarm of flies had devoured. 1 dead. "Does Narchinia know?" Ryan asked. "Does Vulcan know?" "No, I don't think so," Shroud said. "Only Bacchus could access that part of the lab. The Mad Priest used these people to test his experimental bliss strains, destroying people's minds in an insane attempt to contact the Blue Ultimate One. These people were the most recent batch of volunteers, addicts taken off the streets, or perhaps enemies of Augustus sacrificed to his horrendous drug wizard. How many people had died within these walls, their corpses dumped in the incinerator? That. Mr. Wave seemed at a loss of words, waving his hand at the prisoners. Their eyes didn't follow his movements, their gaze empty. Mr. Wave thinks someone scrambled their brain. Ryan had his helmet take pictures of the scene, and then ripped open the nearest pen. His armored hands bent the iron cages open. Shroud immediately grabbed the captive within, a woman no older than 20. Blue mold grew over her skin, and blood had dried beneath her eyes. Ryan walked out of the area while carrying 2 people on his shoulders, watching at the ruins of the production lines. Flames had started to spread, and threatened to engulf the underground facilities. Saren had demolished them all and oversaw her work with a pleased stance, while Len evacuated the workers. "Bianca?" the courier asked. "What?" Saren snapped back. "Once we are done evacuating, collapse the whole place," Ryan said. his tone dangerous. Bury it. Ryan would destroy the factory himself in his perfect run. With Bacchus inside. Chapter 105. Bacchus returned to his factory to find it in ruins. The face he made upon seeing his base burning would forever remain one of Ryan's most cherished memories. Such a subtle mix of disbelief, anger, horror. The priest had clenched his jaw so tightly that the courier worried he might break his teeth. Augustus' reaction had been far less amusing though. After landing on the island to see things for himself and hearing reports of the carnival's involvement, the mob boss had decimated a tenth of the surviving guards. Literally. He picked 1 out of 10 at random, and had their peers beat them to death. With their bare hands. Though Ryan watched the whole show from the safety of Leden's underwater base, a spy bathysphere providing a live feed, the scene has sent chills down his spine. The courier feared for Vulcan's life in particular. She had been in charge of maintaining the defensive perimeter which the strike team easily dealt with, and Mob Zeus was clearly out for blood. The genius was too precious to kill, but Augustus didn't strike Ryan as the most rational person in the room. "I kinda feel bad for these mooks," Ryan said, as the video feed cut. "They deserved it," Len replied at his side, typing on her workshop's computer. Servers thrummed next to steampunkish metal pipes, a song of steam and heat. They were protecting a slaughterhouse, Rere. "I agree, but getting beaten to death by your own teammates is a ghastly way to die. More to the point, it gave a taste of what Augustus would do to Ryan's friends if he ever learned of their involvement. Can you evacuate the base in short order if needed? I have the feeling Lightning Bud might pay it a visit in the near future. I can move the habitats if I am forewarned," his best friend replied. They were, designed to be self-sufficient. Each of them. If I disassemble them, they can move around independently. Tiny islands of communism in a capitalistic sea. Did you call it the Cuba Protocol? Len looked up from her computer, her beautiful eyes reeking of guilt. You did, Ryan said, horrified. The Cuba Initiative, she said, weakly. Ryan studied his poor deluded accomplice, only for his eyes to wander to her clothes. While the time traveler kept the Saturn armor on, Len had made herself comfortable in her lair. Yet instead of her usual jumpsuit, she now wore a pair of blue overalls and a white shirt. The ensemble reminded the courier of these USSR worker ads. Really? Are these new clothes? Ryan asked, never remembering them from the half a dozen or so loops they spent together. Yes. She blushed a little, intimidated. Alchimo's treatment is good for my mood, and I thought I should try something else. Something brighter. As long as you don't wear red, Ryan mused. Len looked away. I don't want to do so. I've seen enough red for a lifetime. Ryan suddenly wondered if her obsession with communist iconography hadn't been a subconscious attempt to keep her father's memory alive. Though that sounded a bit too far-fetched and Freudian for him. Have you pondered Bloodstream's situation? He asked. He knew what needed to be done, but she had to accept it. I did, Len replied with a nod, her gaze harshening. If the treatment we're developing to cure psychos doesn't work on him. She took a long, heavy breath. If it doesn't work, Len said, with an air of finality, I will do it myself. She would euthanize her father. Are you sure? Ryan asked, mindful of her well-being. This would be a horrifying ordeal for anyone. I can do it for you. No, Rere. You already did a lot of things on my behalf. It's my duty. My choice. He's my father's memory. He deserves that much. You will carry this pain all your life. I know, Len replied, her gaze determined. I know. But I will still do it. I have to. It took a while, but she had finally decided to break out of her father's shadow. To bury his ghost, if the man inside was gone for good. Ryan put a hand on her shoulder in sympathy, making her smile sadly. Thanks, Riri, she said, putting her own hand over his own. He could have sworn he could sense the heat through the metal gauntlet. I know I'm difficult. A wreck. Most wouldn't have had your patience. Wouldn't have stayed so long to help. "We're both sinking ships," Ryan said. "Gotta stick together, if we want to stay afloat." "We were sinking ships," she replied, removing her hand. "We were." The workshop's computer bleeped, as Len received a call from the mech-run bunker. The picture of Stitch appeared on the screen, with Mr. Wave petting a Jean Henry in the background. "Greetings, sir," the plague doctor said. "It has reached my ears that the raid was a success." "Mr. Wave likes this cozy place," Mr. Wave said in the background, a Jean Henry meowing his hands. "But Mr. Wave feels his portrait is missing somewhere." "I keep a poster in my room," Ryan said. "I also have the Mr. Wave doll, the Mr. Wave ring, and the Mr. Wave hat. The Mr. Wave-themed candy trucks too?" "Now, I like you, but not as much as my car," Ryan replied. That old machine had been at his side far longer than his Mr. Wave merchandise collection. "Mr. Wave respects a man who loves his car," the superhero said. "Mr. Wave apologizes for not visiting your underwater base. Mr. Wave doesn't like being wet. My teammate does not do well in underwater situations," Stitch mused. "As our fight with the Kraken gang 7 years ago can attest." "Mr. Wave doesn't sink," the Red Genome protested. "He waits. Like alligators. In any case, the Bliss victims you sent me are getting medical attention as we speak," Stitch said. "Alchemo is enthusiastic about repairing the brain damage they suffered, and early test results of our Bliss vaccine are promising. The bloodstream cure also proved effective." Len typed on her keyboard, and video footage of mosquitoes and mongrels' underwater habitats appeared on the screen. Knockoffs had turned each of them into psychos in combination with a true elixir, and both had received a dose of the vaccine. Ryan almost didn't recognize either of them. Mongrel's tumors had vanished, his disfigured face now smooth and unblemished. His bloodshot eyes had reverted to their natural brown color, and a black tuft of hair had started growing back on his head. He remained scrawny as ever, but his posture was straight, his clothes clean. As for Mosquito, the courier wouldn't have recognized him without the video feed indicating his cell number. For the insect had turned into a man. A small, pudgy man in his early 40s, with brown skin and a beardless face. He looked vaguely Spanish, with the eyes of a veteran drinker. It seemed that without a psychomutation, Mosquito could revert back and forth between his insectoid and human form. Both had been granted a separate underwater habitat as a lair. Mongrel cut onions on his small kitchen counter, a bright smile on his face. He looked happy, like a cancer patient having made a miracle recovery. In contrast, Mosquito was reading a book and clearly bored out of his mind. Ryan couldn't blame him, since Len's library was limited to Karl Marx and Jules Verne. They looked so normal. And most importantly, they had done it. They had cured 2 psychos. "Did Siren see this?" Ryan asked. Miss Gassel was growing impatient about getting a treatment, especially since Alchemo hadn't found a way to transfer her memories back. "We're getting closer to a perfect cure." The plague doctor was suddenly far less enthusiastic. "Curing psychos who gained their powers from knockoffs is currently possible, since our vaccine destroys the bloodstream particles in their circulatory system and reverses the genetic damage. As illustrated by Mosquito's cases, the true elixir takes over and turns them back into the genomes they used to be. The problem is when a psycho uses 2 true elixirs." Len changed the video feed to that of Frank the Mad, or Vladimir the Russian, depending on who you asked. The metal giant spent his time glancing at the abyss beyond his porthole, dazed. "We have no way of destroying an extra elixir, if that is even possible," Stitch explained. "I heard of a white genome among the Augusti who could help, though. Cancel only suppresses an elixir's connection to their colored dimension," Ryan said. "She doesn't destroy the elixir itself, nor the mutations it causes." "What is the problem with the cure?" Len asked, confused. "Unlike knockoffs, elixirs don't use DNA to exchange information," Stitch explained. "They can understand and modify it, like a painter in a canvas, but they work on a different level. If one of my plagues modifies a target's DNA, even using the Neanderthal gene ratio you believe is the key to managing 2 powers at once, the elixirs reassert their old patterns. Unless we can inform the elixirs of their mistake in the bonding process, they will see any DNA modification of their host as an outside influence to be rejected, Ryan guessed. Stitch nodded. My thoughts exactly. The problem is even greater with psychos with abnormal, non-DNA-based biologies, such as your friend Saren, Frank, or Gemini. Their bodies are made of gas, metal, or shadows, not flesh. My own power is clueless about how to deal with them. And this made memory transfer difficult. Their consciousness wasn't hosted in a brain, to the point Alchema struggled to transfer Saren's memories. Maybe the elixirs use flux to exchange information? Ryan suggested. This was his best guess, from what he had learned so far. Perhaps, Stitch conceded. But again, this is beyond my expertise, let alone my peers Alchemo and Dr. Tyrano. Mecron's database has a wealth of information on the matter, but nowhere near enough. It took its eyes years to create imperfect knockoffs. They might need a decade to fully reverse engineer the original potions. We need more information on the bonding process, Ryan said. I know a place where we could learn more about elixirs. If this is true, I would like to accompany you, the plague doctor said with eagerness. I was skeptical at first about this project, but now I believe we are close to a great discovery. If we can negate the dangerous side effects of elixirs, then we could help society recover. The courier saw no reason to deny him. Sure, but you should trade your gloves for mittens. Mr. Wave will provide the warmth, he's a one-man global warming, Mr. Wave said in the background, as Len stopped the communication. Ryan crossed his arms, considered his options, and then looked at his best friend. Any way you can help with this, Shorty? It's not my specialty, Len replied in the negative. I pushed my powers limits with the transfer machine, but elixir communications. That's beyond me, Rere. Then let's prepare for our winter vacations, Ryan said. Can you outfit the submarine for the trip? Yes, of course, she said with a nod. She looked rather eager to leave New Rome. Do we have time to stop at the Canary Islands on the way? The children will love it. Sure, Ryan replied with a proud smile. A few loops ago, Len had considered abandoning the surface altogether. She would have asked to go to Antarctica without delay, refusing to take a moment to breathe and simply enjoy the wonders on the way. It had taken a lot of effort, but she was starting to live again. When twilight came, Ryan picked up Livia at Mount Augustus by car, and moved to Mars and Venus home. Unlike their daughter's apartment, the Augusti power couple lived in an English-styled manor close to Mount Augustus. The mansion was 3 stories tall, and made of gray stone and stained glass windows rather than marble. Ryan found it a nice change from Augustus' obsession with antiquity and Roman aestheticism. The place remained luxurious though, with a fountain in the garden and doormen in fancy clothes awaiting guests. Ryan noticed a few vehicles near the entrance, including Jamie's and Cancel's. With the Bliss Factory's destruction, the Augusti had decided to increase security around Narcinia, and Lightning Butt's daughter too. When Ryan came to pick his girlfriend, Mortimer and Sparrow had escorted them all the way to their destination on motorcycles. For a moment, the time traveler felt like a president again, with bodyguards ready to die for his safety. Or at least his first ladies. They didn't suspect him of treachery though. Ryan had sent Incognito, a metagang member, to act as his decoy. By using his powers to pose as the courier, the Psycho had provided him with a foolproof alibi. As far as the Augusti were concerned, Ryan had gambled colossal sums of money at their casinos while the Bliss Factory burned. And all it cost was a shot of knockoff elixirs to satisfy Incognito's addiction. Also, Ryan had infected him with nanites that would explode in his blood if he misbehaved. It was Mecron's version of an ankle tag, and quite effective. The courier had traded his Saturn armor for a purple shirt and black pants, simple yet elegant. Meanwhile, Livia had chosen to wear a black turtleneck and pants, as if she went to a funeral rather than a dinner. Which in this case wasn't that far from the truth. Ryan's girlfriend hadn't said a word during the trip. "Are you sulking?" the courier asked, as he parked his car near the fountain. Sparrow and Mortimer did the same with their motorcycles. The former stayed near the Plymouth Fury, and the latter exchanged words with the doorman to check up on the security perimeter. Livia brought a mobile phone out of her pocket and wordlessly showed Ryan the screen. It was a picture her boyfriend sent her after destroying the Bliss factory. The courier posed in front of the fortress smoking rubble, thumb raised, while Mr. Wave peeked from the right. Ryan had drawn words in the sand, as a message to Lightning Butt. "Hey Augie, still looking for that lightning rod?" "It was terrible," Livia said, as she switched out her phone. "If we were married, it would be grounds for divorce." "The joke struck you as bad?" "Yes, it did." She paused, before rolling her eyes. "Struck, truly. I was just as shocked when the idea crossed my mind." This time it made her giggle. "I guess I didn't spend enough time brainstorming." "When it rains, it pours," Livia lamented, a smile on her face. "Oh come on, I can see you like my puns." "They are bad, Ryan," she said, wounding his sensitive heart, "but so bad they end up being funny anyway." Ryan looked at the building. "So what's the plan to get Narcinia out of her parents' claws?" "They won't let her out of sight after the loss of their drug lab." "I have an idea in mind, but I need a little more time to refine it," Livia said. "Whenever your actions have a large impact, it takes me a while to see the ripples you make." Her boyfriend's hands tightened on the driving wheel. "Bacchus kept test subjects in the factory's basement," he informed her. "One of them died." "I saw the possibility," she said, looking away. "I hoped I was wrong." "Will the victim be alive a few days ago?" Ryan asked, his girlfriend nodding hesitantly. "Then I will strike the factory as soon as the metagang is dealt with in the next loop." "Narcinia and Bacchus will be inside," she warned. "It will be far harder." "I will manage." Now that he could destroy Geist and had access to the Bliss factory's systems, he could easily shatter the defenses in his next run. "I could take Narcinia to the carnival while I'm at it. My father will react badly. I won't give him the time." Livia joined her hands, and locked eyes with her boyfriend. "You intend to fight him," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes." Ryan hadn't dared to broach the subject openly, but he couldn't sugarcoat the truth. Even though it risked damaging the relationship, Shroud had a point. The courier liked Livia, but not to the point of letting her father get away with his crimes. He had to be stopped for the good of everyone else. "Livia, your father knew about Bacchus prisoners," Ryan said. "We saw that in the factory's terminal. He did worse than give his consent. He sent his pet priest more victims to refine his product. He murdered Narcinia's parents and thousands more. Hell, he chose to settle an old score rather than help when Bloodstream threatened to turn everyone into tomato juice. That shows how little he cares about life. Your dad won't stop killing, unless he's forced to." "I know." Her voice broke, the seer closing her eyes and gathering her breath. "I know that, Ryan. I know what he is. But he has little time already. I have seen it. Can't you just wait? If we delay enough, when he senses his death approaching, Lightning Butt will go on a rampage and slaughter countless more." Ryan remained silent for a few seconds, letting his girlfriend recover. "Livia, you can't talk him out of his madness." "We can," she said. "With you at my side, I can find it." "Livia, I will help as much as I can," Ryan promised, "but I don't think words will work with your dad. Not even yours. If the apocalypse couldn't make him pause, nothing will." "Then what am I supposed to do?" she asked, holding back tears. "Give you my permission to kill my own father. Is that what you want?" "I don't have to kill your father to neutralize him." "Then how?" "Dynamis and the carnival tried everything. Nothing worked. Nothing they have will work. I've seen where it leads." Her fingers fidgeted on her lap. "You killed Geist. Somehow." "I did." "You have something that could kill my father. Or you think it could?" "Yes," Ryan admitted. Livia bit her lower lip, the same way Len did. "Why are you telling me this, Ryan?" "Because I trust you." "There, he said it. I trust you." Ryan took her hands into his own, making her blush slightly. "I want you at my side. I want to stay with you even after we clean the city up." I want our relationship to work. I don't want something built on lies. I've seen where it led with Flight and his golden retriever. That's a mean way to call my best friend, Livia replied, her fingers tightening around his own. I want us to work too, Ryan. But I don't want my boyfriend and my father to kill each other. I don't want to see that. I almost did when he caught you, and I don't think I can shoulder it. Even if you reverse time afterward. I think I can imprison your dad, the courier said. Where no one will break him out. You will send him to Monaco, or a pocket dimension? Livia shook her head. He will break out. He has geniuses on his payrolls, loyal lieutenants, contingencies. He won't have that for long. You can't destroy an entire organization by yourself. I can, and I did, Ryan replied. And I'm not alone this time. Ryan, I know there's a solution. A peaceful solution. Livia's hands broke away from his own. I'm okay with imprisonment, or a forced retirement. But not death. I'm sick of all these murders and violence. It is to cease somewhere. You're okay with killing Bacchus, Ryan pointed out, but not the one giving him his orders? Bacchus is not family, Livia replied, fidgeting in her seat. That's selfish, I know. I won't deny it. I want to save people, Ryan, but I don't want to see my family perish either. I don't want to make that choice. If you have to kill a loved one to save the world, would you do it? I would find a third option. My point exactly. You said you could do anything if given time, and I hope we can find a third option too. Ryan said nothing for a while, as Livia gathered her thoughts. She knew Augustus had to be stopped, and on some level, she understood there wasn't a way to do so peacefully. He could see it on her face. In the end, she opened her mouth again, her voice a whisper. Promise me, Ryan. Promise you what? That you won't kill my father, Livia said, her face grave and heavy. Don't kill him, please. Or we are done. Drag him off his throne, destroy his kingdom of sin, imprison him underwater until he expires. I can live with that. But don't kill him. Please. For a tense half a minute, they locked eyes with each other. If Ryan refused, he would make an enemy of Livia. She cared for her family, as much as he loved his own friends. Even if he survived the ensuing retribution, whatever future they could build together would die with lightning but they would remain bitter enemies. Augustus deserved death for his crimes. He might not have been as bad as Big Fat Adam, but his crimes were almost as horrendous. He had murdered his way across the world for years, and he remained unrepentant. And yet, Ryan had lived long enough to know there were punishments far more terrible than death. It was all a question of imagination. I won't kill your father, Ryan swore, to Livia's relief, but I will defeat him. Decisively. I will break him so thoroughly that he will never threaten anyone else again. The Black Ultimate One had granted him the power to harm Augustus, and the Time Traveler would make use of it. His girlfriend couldn't help but respond with nervous laughter. Your last encounter wasn't glorious. That's the good thing about me, princess. I can lose 1,000 times, but only have to win once. Ryan looked back at the manor. I won't kill him, for you. But I will rough him up, and he won't escape karma. He has too much blood on his hands, and his victims deserve justice. His punishment won't be lethal, but it won't be merciful either. Are you all right with that? It's a compromise, she replied, shaking her head. None of us get all that we want. Perhaps. But it was better than getting nothing. Chapter 106 Mars and Venus Home embodied everything wrong about their organization, rot festering beneath a nice veneer. Oh, at first glance their manor looked like the height of casual opulence. Venus had tastefully decorated her home with luxuries such as English furniture, hardwood cabinets from Spain, Turkish carpets and Tunisian tapestries. The manor also housed billiard tables, private poker rooms, and even a Roman-themed art gallery. Ryan guessed they couldn't help but pucker up to Lightning Butt's obsessions. But everything came from the pre-war era. The chairs were old, the rugs were worn flat, the stone floors wrinkled. Even the main room's TV was outdated. And while the staff had numerous employees, they were nowhere near enough to take good care of the estate. Most rooms felt empty and lifeless. This place reeked of past obsessions and lost glory. "Ugh, I can smell the dust," Ryan said as he visited an empty ballroom, Livia holding his arm. "Wait, is that asbestos? All the non-genomes and the staff will get illnesses," Livia confirmed with a sigh. "I warned Fortuna's parents, but they wouldn't listen." Huh? Not only did the Vrons deal in drugs and prostitutes, but they also knowingly gave their staff lung disease. They were truly irredeemable. Most worryingly, Ryan noticed Cancel and Mortimer shadowing him and Livia. While it was ostensibly to protect the couple, when the courier tested his time stop, it didn't activate. This immediately put him on high alert. Something was up. "Can I shout, it's a trap?" Ryan candidly asked his girlfriend, whispering in her ear. "Maybe later," she replied in the same hushed tone, resting her head against his shoulders while he put his arm around her shoulders. To outsiders, they looked like they were about to kiss. "Do you have weapons on yourself?" "Yes, but not my best ones." Though he came dressed casually, he always kept hidden knives beneath his clothes. "I can always drop my pants. That should blind them." Livia gave him a dirty look. "It didn't blind me when I looked closely. Because I put the safety on." "Keep your pants up, and your other weapons closer," she replied, careful that Cancel and Mortimer couldn't hear them. Thankfully, while they remained at close distance, the two hitmen gave the couple enough space for privacy. "And have Len be ready to evacuate you. You might need to go to Antarctica quicker than expected." "So this is a trap?" "Yes," Livia admitted with a dark look. "But not for us. You could have warned me beforehand." Then again, Ryan did interfere with her power. She probably had a hard time adjusting to his actions. "I like surprises, but not when our favorite power canceller is nearby." The threat of dying permanently or worse still frightened the courier. "I wasn't sure until we entered the building," Livia admitted, as they left the ballroom for a mirrored hallway. It reminded Ryan of the ruins of Versailles, which he had visited in a previous loop. There wasn't a genome assassin hidden in his reflection this time around though, much to his disappointment. "I foresaw some worrying possibilities, and Greta's presence only confirms my worries." "Doesn't our cheery sociopath prevent you from seeing anything in her vicinity?" Ryan asked, taking his cell phone and sending a text message to Len, the panda, Shroud, and everyone else who would listen. "She does, which is why Father sent her," Livia replied darkly as her boyfriend put his phone back in his pocket, "but I saw all the ways this dinner could end before coming here. Except those where you interfere, of course." "Do some end with explosions?" Ryan asked hopefully, "because I can help with those." "I know you can," Livia replied mirthfully, as they reached the dining room's entrance. "But please don't burn the carpets. I like some of those." A single guard stood watch over the doors, a man in an all-black bodysuit covering his entire body. Ryan wondered how he could see without holes in his mask. The guard flinched upon seeing the couple, while the time traveler gave him a sadistic smile worthy of Jack Nicholson. "Ryan, this is Night Terror of the Killer 7, Livia introduced them to each other. "Night Terror, this is Ryan Romano, my boyfriend." "We met," the man said, spitting each word. "With all due respect, Lady Livia, your companion is a home-breaking asshole." "Wait, this is the guy who punched you in the face for no reason?" Mortimer asked from behind the group, suddenly interested. "Oh, that's awkward. For no reason at all," Night Terror complained while raising an accusing finger at Ryan's face. "I don't even know him." "I'm sure my companion had his reasons," Livia said, before glancing at her boyfriend. "Right, Ryan?" The courier didn't answer. Instead, he kept staring at Night Terror, the way a mongoose glared at a snake. He didn't say a word. He just waited. "Maybe he punches everyone?" Mortimer asked, trying to fill the silence while Livia raised an eyebrow. "He didn't punch me," Cancel said. "I would have killed him if he had tried, sure, but he didn't." She sounded a little disappointed about that. "Did you use your powers on my boyfriend?" Livia asked Night Terror with a falsely innocent smile. The darkling impersonator crossed his arms. He was trying to look strong, but Ryan could tell that the silent glare was slowly starting to unsettle him. Maybe. I don't keep track. That's why poor old Mortimer kills his victims, the wall-facing hitman said. When they come back to haunt him, at least he knows why. Ryan said nothing, causing Night Terror to start losing his nerve. Don't you have anything to say for yourself? The courier said nothing. Instead, he kept staring at the man's mask, until Night Terrorized started looking away. But he couldn't escape Ryan's stare inside a mirror gallery. Stop doing that, the hitman asked, unsettled. You think you can make me lose my nerve? You think you can get under my skin? I'm fear itself. The silence stretched on, more and more uncomfortably. Cancel and Mortimer probably exchanged glances behind Ryan, and Livia clearly struggled not to laugh, but he only had eyes for the gaping darkness in front of him. Lady Livia, can you ask this man to stop, please? Night Terrorized tried to look down, but Augustus' daughter said nothing. Stop it. Ryan gently put a hand below his praised chin, and forced him to look up. There was no escape. Eventually, Night Terror crumbled. Okay, I get it, he said, walking away from the doors. Vamp will take my shift. Sparrow won't like it, Cancel said, while Mortimer chuckled like a hyena. Whatever, Night Terrorized complained, before realizing that Ryan's gaze followed him. His pace accelerated greatly afterward, until he exited the gallery. When he was gone, Livia couldn't hold her laughter anymore. You're horrible, Ryan. Ryan looked silently at his girlfriend. But she was better at this game than he was, and he submitted. The dining room turned out to be a large banquet hall on the first floor, with a sprawling table capable of housing 24 persons. An unused fireplace faced 3 windows giving an impeccable view of the gardens outside, with Cancel positioning herself to look through the central one while Mortimer protected the entrance. Adorable, they expected an attack from the outside, but not from within. Mars had taken over the table's head, one daughter sitting on each side. Jamie and Ki-young had taken the seats closest to Narchinia, while Matthias Shroudy Mertel stayed at his girlfriend's side, having traded his transparent costume for tasteful blue jeans and a shirt. Considering how close he sat to his lucky charm, Ryan guessed they had patched up somehow. Livy. Fortuna grinned ear to ear upon seeing her best friend, while Matthias gave Ryan a sharp nod. He looked secretly relieved to see a friendly face, especially when he noticed Cancel and Mortimer. Come, sit with us. Sorry to have kept you waiting, Livia said, the very picture of courtesy. Mercury, Chitter, I am so glad you could come. I can't get used to that name, Jamie replied. Ryan hadn't seen this caring bear of a man much lately, but he had made some effort to dress well for this dinner, wearing a suit and a tie. His Korean girlfriend Ki-young fidgeted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable with either the situation or her sleeveless black dress. She had given up her glasses for contact lenses, but would rather stare at the table than at the other guests. The pressure weighed on her. I don't think I ever will. It will come with time, Mars reassured him. The older man shared his junior's paternal aura, and Ryan had the feeling the two men were the same, a generation apart. But when the courier examined them both, he noticed a predatory glint in Mars' gaze that wasn't present in Jamie's. Though it's a shame you took the job on the day we lost our Bliss production center. Darn ill omen. The drugs mansion mate Ki-young raised her head, like a dreamer waking up from a long nap. Oh, her boyfriend said, holding her hand to comfort her. Oh, yes, that's true. Jamie tried not to look pleased, but he was a terrible liar and Ryan could see his true feelings in his eyes. Ischia Island's destruction clearly came as an enormous relief to him. I can't believe they killed Geist, Narchinia complained, arms crossed. I know he wanted to die, but wasn't he already dead? Ki-young finally found the courage to speak up. How can you slay a ghost? One attempt at once, Ryan said from experience. Hopefully, eventually it will stick. Narchinia's mood worsened further. It won't feel the same without him, even if we rebuild the place. He was funny and kind, and all was there. The loss of Ischia Island weighs heavily on all of our minds, Olivia said as she sat between Fortuna and Ryan himself. The courier's chair let out a worrying sound, as if it threatened to crumble beneath him. But this should be a joyful reunion, not an occasion to open old wounds. I couldn't agree more, Fortuna said with a bright smile. We should savor the champagne. Jamie, Ki-young, tell them the news. The two exchanged a sheepish glance. We're getting married soon, Jamie announced. Jamie proposed, Ki-young said, blushing. Congratulations, Ryan said with genuine joy, though he already learned the news in a previous loop. When is the baby? This made Jamie laugh. We'll wait a few years. At this rate, we will only have married couples around this table, Mars said while glancing at Matthias. When will you propose? It sounded innocent, but the man's eyes didn't smile when his mouth did. Unlike Jamie's, his easygoing friendliness was all a sham. A mask that hid something darker and calculating. Dad, Fortuna protested. That's not something you ask at dinner. It won't be for tomorrow, Matthias replied dryly. My daughter told me you were a video game designer. Mars continued to fish for information. Is that working out well for you? I'm still looking for sponsors, Matthias replied. Have you tried GoFundMe? Ryan asked mirthfully. His co-conspirator raised an eyebrow, skeptical. GoFundMe. In this information age, it is key to protect your data from Dynamis and other heartless dynamic providers, Ryan said with a telemarketer's voice. Which was to say, like someone who sold his soul for money. With more than 10 billion users, GoFundMe creates a wall of goats to shield your emails from unwanted ads, except their own. I remember an ad like this one on the Dynanet, Ki-young said with amusement. Alongside one for Wyvern League Legend, I believe. I'm sure their marketing budget is bigger than most third-world countries, Ryan said. Which, to be fair, isn't saying much nowadays. We could help with that sponsor issue, Mars told his future-in-law. Thankfully, the carnival infiltrator's soul wasn't for sale. I would prefer to stand on my own feet, sir. Yes, Dad, my Matthias has something better than money, Fortuna said. He has me. You should have dumped him, Narcinia said, pouting. Clearly, she didn't like Matthias any more than in the previous loops. She probably sensed he wasn't as transparent as he let it look. I almost did, but then I asked Livy to tell me my future, her sister admitted with an uneasy smile, while Matthias' eyes wandered from Narcinia to her adoptive father. Then I decided to give him another chance. I knew things would turn out all right, of course, since they always do, but it was nice to have an outside confirmation. Come to think of it, you could make a killing from palm reading, Ryan told his girlfriend. I work better with crystal balls, Livy replied with a giggle, or when I open sheep entrails to interpret the content. Narcinia gasped. You're kidding, right? Of course, Livy reassured the young teen. It was a joke. But just in case, keep your sheep safely penned in at night, Ryan said with a knowing grin. Narcinia childishly stuck out her tongue at the courier, much to his amusement, while Jamie started asking Matthias and Fortuna about how they met. With the guests distracted and the Killer 7 focused on the windows and doors, Ryan started whispering into his girlfriend's ear. I thought you hated our translucent friend. I still think Fortuna is too good for him, Livy replied with a shrug, speaking low enough that others wouldn't hear. But he makes her happy in most futures where they end up together. Or at least, the possibilities where I can reform my father's organization and avoid a war. I simply told her as much. Ryan raised an eyebrow. There are futures where things go well. Yes, Ryan, there are, Livia chuckled while rolling her eyes. They are rare, but if Dad fully retires and Enrique Manada takes over Dynamis, I get to reform my organization peacefully. No more drugs, forced prostitution, intimidation, or money laundering. My family goes legit. I funnel our war chest towards renovating Rust Town, creating jobs. We help Europe rebuild into something we can be proud of. I hope to see that one day. You will, if I have my way. But to Ryan's surprise, Instead of saying this with a smile, Livia glanced at the fireplace anxiously. The courier followed her gaze, noticing nothing extraordinary. "Livia. You said you trusted me," she whispered back, so low he could hardly understand her words. "Okay, something was definitely wrong here." "Livia, what's happening? I hope I'm wrong." Thankfully, the others were making enough noise for the two of them to whisper close to each other. "But, I have seen how this dinner could go, and it seems like this possibility might come to pass. If it does, someone will fall down the chimney shaft. Mars will make a call to my father, and when the call finishes, that person will die. Unless you intervene." "Someone? How could someone slip past the guards, climb over the roof, and move into the chimney unseen?" "Someone who lived here for years." A chill went down Ryan's spine, and he realized he had already lived through these events. "Your father would order a hit on him?" His eyes wandered around the room, and he noticed Mortimer had vanished. Did he move to another part of the manor, or was he hiding in the walls in ambush? "Dad already did, though he thinks I don't know yet," Livia said darkly, her eyes turning to Mars. "His parents tried to invite him officially, but he smelled the trap. Why would he even come?" "For Narchinia. He will want to talk her into leaving the family behind now that the factory is destroyed, and he knows my family wiretaps her phone." Livia shook her head sadly. "He will think my father wants to capture him, not kill him." Ryan tensed. "That's why Cancel has her power active in your vicinity? So you wouldn't see it coming and stop it?" Livia nodded sadly. "But why?" Ryan tried to figure it out, before realizing his mistake. "I mentioned Dynamis while fighting Geist. My father is convinced the Bliss Factory assault was an inside job, rightfully so. Of course Lightning Butt would get paranoid and grasp at straws. I will distract Cancel, but Mars and some of the other Killer 7 will probably give pursuit." "What about Jamie and Ki-young?" Ryan asked, glancing at the couple. The courier knew they were good people, but would they make the right choice? "It can go either way," Livia said. "It depends on who they are deep down." Ryan frowned. "You knew this could happen. You could have stopped it." "I could have," she admitted, her face undecipherable. "I know my father gave the order in a previous loop, but I hope those were exceptional circumstances. This possibility is unlikely, Ryan. Maybe it won't come to pass. But she could have guaranteed it wouldn't happen by making the right phone calls." "Why did you make it possible at all?" "Because Narchinia needs to see it, as my previous self did," Livia said with a sigh. "Or else she will never open her eyes to what her parents are, and the happy future I have seen will never come to pass." "And?" She shyly joined her hands and looked up at her boyfriend. "I did it because I trust you, Ryan," the Augusti princess said softly. "Because I know you can make it work. That you can change things." Ryan looked into her eyes, and realized that she had put all her hopes on him. He didn't even consider refusing. The courier had fought all the Killer 7 before, except for Tuna, who would certainly help. He could beat them. As for Mars, Ryan had seen him in action before. He could teleport objects around. "What's his range?" Ryan asked Livia while looking at the Olympian. Mars chuckled at something Matthias said, but his fingers brushed against the table, like a cat itching to show his claws. 10 meters, Livia said, her fingers brushing against his. "If something happens, I will move to Sorrento. We will meet again there, after you are done with your business in Antarctica." "And if nothing happens?" Livia smiled. "Then we will have a very boring dinner on our hands." This made Ryan wish for more action. "I'll find a way," he whispered. "I know," Livia replied, before rising from her seat. "Cancel, can you escort me to the bathroom?" "Oh, sure," the guard said, clearly eager to follow. Too eager. Ryan watched his girlfriend and her bodyguard exit through the door, his eyes wandering to the fireplace next. "It's been a while," Narchinia complained to her adoptive father. "When is Mom coming?" Mars shrugged. "She is in the kitchen, supervising the staff. Or more likely, preparing an ambush." You know your mother, she's obsessed with everything being perfect. It's almost compulsive. You're telling me, Fortuna said with a displeased face. A perfect face created by her mother's power. Your mom is dealing with anxiety in her own way, her father said. The carnival is in town, and they killed many of our own. She will feel safer with you and your sister at home. But not Adam, Kitty? Ryan asked the hard question. He noticed soot falling down the fireplace, almost imperceptibly so. A few chuckled at the nickname, but Mars wasn't among them. We invited him, he said. But my son is stubborn. He didn't even answer my messages, Fortuna said angrily. I swear, when I see him again, I will punch him in the arm so hard, it will never work again. If only she knew he was hiding in the room, waiting for the dinner to end and the guests to go to sleep. Dynamics and activity must have frustrated him a great deal to even consider something this reckless. Did he think he could convince his sister to leave, and then sneak them out? What kind of foolish, idealistic boy would think this was ever a good idea? The same bold boy who accepted a carnival invitation knowing it was a death sentence. But for all his strength of character, he tripped down the chimney shaft and crashed into the fireplace. The other guests glanced at the chimney, as a shape loudly fell on the ground and blew a small cloud of soot in the room. Ryan wondered if Santa Claus had taken on an intern, for the young man that emerged from the fireplace was 50 years too young to be Father Christmas. Adam Katz coughed as he rose from the fireplace, his hero costume tainted black and gray by ashes and soot. Hi. Tobe continued. Thanks for listening.